Welcome back to Sisters Unbothered, the space where we unmask, unlearn, and reclaim our peace, one powerful conversation at a time. Now listen, today we're stepping into the workplace because self-stewardship doesn't stop at your front door. If you've ever felt guilty for setting boundaries on the job, or caught yourself saying yes when your spirit whispered no, this one is for you. We're talking about what it really means to honor your worth at work without sabotaging your career, shrinking your voice, or losing your sanity. Grab your tea or coffee, your journal, and your courage, because we're about to unmask what it costs to survive professionalism and how to start leading from a place of wholeness. If you are new to this podcast, thank you so much for allowing me to earn your trust. If you're returning, thank you so much for your support. Let's get into it. Hey, what's up, y'all? How are you? Welcome back to Sisters Unbothered. I am Coach Nikki Cates. Last week, we dove deep into self-stewardship in our personal lives, our domestic lives. And sis, the responses I got, y'all were feeling seen, heard, and maybe a little called out. If I stepped on your toes, sorry, not sorry, sis. This is for us to grow and heal. But that's what we're here to do. We get real so we can get free. This week, we're taking that same energy into the workplace. Because listen, if you thought self-stewardship was hard at home, wait until you try it at work, where your livelihood is on the line, where you're navigating workplace politics, and where that little voice in your head is whispering, but what if they think I'm not a team player? Because we all know, quote unquote, being a team player definitely has a different connotation than what it looks like on the surface. So grab your coffee, your journal, and maybe some tissues, because we're about to talk about something that hits different for those of us who've been taught that our professional success depends on our ability to say yes to everything. Stay late without complaint. Handle microaggressions with respectability. And smile while we're drowning in other people's urgent requests. Today, we're talking about professional self-stewardship and why it feels like career suicide when you try to practice it. But before we dive in, I want you to think about this. What's the point of climbing the ladder if you lose yourself on every rung? That takes me to the scripture, what profit a man if he loses his soul? So you think about that, and let's go ahead and get ready to jump in. Also, what I would like for you to think about is, when was the last time you left work feeling energized instead of depleted? When was the last time you said no to a request that wasn't in your job description? When was the last time you took your full lunch break without feeling guilty? I see you. I see you nodding along, or maybe feeling that familiar tightness in your chest. That's your body telling you we need to have this conversation. So let's get to it. Now, this is in relation to the Unmasked series. So let's start by naming the masks that we wear at work. I call it the super employee mask. The one that says we're always available, always agreeable, always ready to go above and beyond. And for many of us, especially women of color, this mask feels like survival. We've been taught that we have to work twice as hard to get half as far. Tell me you are not seeing Papa Pope talking to Olivia Pope right now when I say that. We've been taught that we have to work twice as hard to get half as far. We've been told that we can't afford to be seen as difficult, emotional, or non-committed. So what do? We overcompensate. We over deliver. We over function. And then we end up, surprisingly, over exhausted. I remember when I first started in corporate America, it was in the banking industry. I thought my worth was tied to my availability. Someone needed a report at 6 a.m., I was there. Last minute project on Friday at 5, count me in. Weekend work? Absolutely. I thought this was what dedication looked like. I thought this is what it looked like to be a picture of success. But here's what I learned. When you make yourself indispensable by being overly available, you don't become invaluable. You become invisible. Your boundaries disappear. Your needs no longer matter. And your well-being becomes collateral damage in the name of being professional. So let's get real about the red flags of workplace self-neglect, because recognition is the first step toward liberation. And if you are one that leads or manages others, they are watching you and they will follow your lead. So what are some of these red flags? Red flag number 1. You are the go-to person for everything that's not in your job description. Everyone knows they can come to you when they need something done quickly and without questions asked. Planning the office party? Ask her. Covering for someone who's out sick? She'll do it. Training the new hire? She's got it. Meanwhile, your actual job responsibilities are piling up and you're working overtime, nights and weekends to catch up. This happens because you've trained people that your time is more available than others. You've signaled that you'll absorb the extra work without pushback. And now you're stuck being the office everything person while your career development and personal development takes a back seat. Y'all feel that one? Red flag number 2. You eat lunch at your desk more often than not. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you took a full uninterrupted lunch break? And I don't mean scarfing down a sandwich while answering emails. Myself guilty. I mean actually stepping away from your workspace, eating without looking at screens, or maybe even going outside. If you can't remember, you are not alone. I work from home and I can't remember the last time I fully walked away without doing something else that was productive. If it wasn't work related, it's business related, it's school related, it's family related. I can't think of the last time I actually took a lunch that literally was me doing nothing. But here's the thing. When you don't take breaks, you're not being more productive. You're being more drained, more depleted. You're signaling to yourself and others that your basic needs do not matter. So we already said we're training people on how to treat us and see us. And we're also signaling to them that our basic needs and well-being does not matter. Do you agree with me when I say that we have too many managers and leaders that are signaling this very thing? Red flag number 3. You respond to emails and messages outside of work hours. Oh, this is a big one, y'all. You're at home trying to relax and that notification pops up. Quick question. Or when you get a chance. And you respond right then and there at 8 p.m. on Saturday during your vacation. Now, in my corporate position, I have allowed myself to not fall into this category anymore. However, my time in mortgages, real estate, restaurant management, my previous life, I most definitely was guilty of this. You tell yourself it's just being responsive, but what you're really doing is training people that you are always available. I want to point that out again. We're training people how to teach us how to see us. We are signaling to people what matters most to us, which is typically not ourselves or our lives. And we may not be meaning to, but our habits of how to respond and react are set in place, and we have not become intentional about changing them. So what happens? You're erasing the boundary between work time and personal time. And you're contributing to a culture where everyone is expected to be always on. But guess what? There is an off button, even if you're climbing the ladder to success. Red flag number 4. You take on emotional labor that's not your job. This is a big one, especially for women. You're mediating conflicts between coworkers. You're managing other people's emotions. You're the one everyone vents to. You're planning birthday celebrations and retirement parties. You're remembering everyone's personal details and checking in on people. Now, caring about your coworkers isn't wrong, but when you become the office therapist, party planner, and emotional support system, you're doing work that's not compensated, not recognized, and not advancing your career. And for my spirit-filled believers, this is where Holy Spirit's discernment is so important. Yes, we are to be a light at our jobs. Yes, we are to be disciples of Jesus Christ, but that does not mean that we have to insert ourselves and deplete ourselves in the process. That is where discernment is necessary to know where it is our call to interact and where it is not. Okay? Red flag number 5. You feel guilty asking for what you need. Just like in our last episode. You need clarification on a project, but you don't want to bother anyone. You don't want to bother anyone, and yet you stay bothered. Our goal on this podcast is unbothered. You need additional resources, but you don't want to seem demanding. You need time off, but you feel guilty about the inconvenience it may cause. Sis, if you're nodding along to 3 or more of these, we need to have a serious conversation about how you're showing up at work. Because the cost of this pattern isn't just your energy that you can't get back, by the way. It's your career trajectory, your professional reputation, and your sense of self-worth. And I would ask you, are you in alignment with your core values in this job or career? And are you walking the path that God created you for? That is heavily loaded, every single one of those questions. So I would encourage you to bring these questions or these thoughts or concerns to our coaching session so we can discuss, okay? All right. So here are 4 strategies for professional self-stewardship. Now, let's talk about what we're going to do about it now that we've talked about the red flags. We might even be feeling a little wounded, kicked in the butt. But that's okay. It's with love, I promise you. I'm going to share 4 strategies for practicing self-stewardship at work without sabotaging your career. Because the goal isn't to become selfish or unprofessional. It is to become strategic and sustainable. Okay? Strategy number 1. Master the professional pause. Just like in our personal life, giving ourselves time, a moment to think, to breathe, a cushion of time. Instead of immediately saying yes to every request, practice saying, let me check my bandwidth and get back to you by enter a specific time. This gives you time to assess whether this request aligns with your priorities and capacity. Mind you, priorities change, okay? Priorities change. This is why I'm an advocate for grounding yourself first thing in the morning and having a better understanding, decluttering and organizing your thoughts and your heart and your priorities and tasks so that you understand what capacity you do have. How are you feeling in your body? Where are you mentally and emotionally? Are you having a rough day mentally and emotionally? Are you dealing with something? Are you feeling depressed or anxious and you're trying to work through that? What's going on with you? If we don't take the time to pay attention to ourselves before we enter into this space, we will not feel comfortable or be effective by utilizing this pause to give ourselves time. Okay? This gives you time to assess whether this aligns with who you are and where you are going in that very moment. Okay? Here's the key. You're not saying no immediately, which can trigger workplace politics. You're demonstrating that you're thoughtful about your commitments. Most reasonable managers will respect this approach because it shows you're strategic, not just reactive. Now, granted, this is very much so subjective. You may have a manager that's more broken than you are. I'm sorry, I don't want to use the word broken. But they have not done the work on themselves. And so they may approach you in a way where you requesting this pause could be offensive to them. However, that is not your problem. Okay? That is above you. Go to your prayer closet and pray for that person. When someone asks you to take on a project, quote, "This sounds important. Let me review my current commitment to get back to you by tomorrow morning with a realistic timeline," unquote. When you're invited to a meeting that's not directly related to your role, quote, "Thanks for including me. Let me check if I can add value to this discussion and confirm by the end of the day," unquote. Now, both of these seem a little iffy in our current workplace, right? Depending on where you work, I would say that this past job that I have had, my manager has probably been one of the best that I've ever had. And so if I was to say something like this, he would have respected it. But I have also had managers that would guilt trip or bulldoze me trying to protect my space, my peace, and my time. So you are going to need discernment, my sisters. This is why you need to ground yourself, not just within yourself, but with the Spirit of the Lord, so that you can recognize where and who and what, okay, for the most effectiveness. Strategy number 2, protect your peak performance hours. Now, a lot of you that are listening may not be familiar with your energy zones. I will say that it is becoming more common and put out there that time management is not really effective without understanding how your energy peaks. For myself, my energy zone peaks early in the day, and then it starts to dwindle down from there. So probably around 1 or 2 o'clock, I am dwindling. So I try to get as many high energy, creative, the things that require the most of me, I try to do those within my peak hours. If I spend that time doing mundane things like working through a task list or working through emails and putting out fires or, whatever it may be at your job, right? Those things that don't really require a lot of thought or energy. If you waste your time on that, you are going to struggle or do terribly at the things that are the most important. So I encourage you to identify the 2 to 3 hours when you do your best work and then guard them fearlessly. Okay? Be fierce, my sisters, at guarding the times when you will be your peak self so that you can do your best work in that time. Do you have an important project that your career is hanging on? During your peak hours, prioritize working on that project, okay? This might be first thing in the morning, like for me. For you, it might be right after lunch. Whenever you know your brain is the sharpest, okay? During these hours, you focus only on the highest priority tasks that move your career forward. move your team forward, and allow you to show up as best as you can for your team. Block these hours on your calendar. Mark them as busy. And what I'm telling y'all, you're going to have to protect them, at least in the beginning, fearlessly. You might even have to build a moat and an electric fence and put some pit bulls out there at first. Try not to schedule meetings during this time unless they are absolutely critical. Use this time for strategic work, creative thinking, or skill development, the things that actually advance your career. If you are an introvert like myself, this may include interactions with people because that is going to drain you. I know what you're thinking, but what if someone needs me? Here's the truth. If you're constantly available for other people's urgent requests, you'll never have time for your own important work. And important work is what gets you promoted, not just being responsive or available. Okay? And you and I both know when you give people an inch, they take a mile. So keep that in mind as you're making these special decisions to allow people to encroach on your most important peak performance time. Strategy number 3, create professional boundaries around communication. This means setting clear expectations about when and how you communicate. Did I say clear? Clear. You might say, I check email 3 times a day and respond within 24 hours. Or, I am available for urgent calls until 6 p.m., but prefer email for non-urgent matters. Now, this isn't just professionally. This is business. This is ministry. And this is personal, okay? Set specific time periods for yourself. Remember, boundaries are for you, not for the other person or the other people. They are for you. Set boundaries for yourself so that you can protect the times that matter the most, the tasks that matter the most, okay? When you communicate your boundaries clearly, you're not being difficult. You're being professional. You're helping others understand how to work with you effectively. Remember, we are training and signaling to people how we work and how we expect to be seen and treated. And you're modeling healthy communication practices can become contagious to others. Set up an email signature that includes your response time expectations. Make it clear to your team members when you need to block time and why, and what warrants an emergency. I think we need to include that as well. Use your voicemail to redirect non-urgent calls to email and set up auto responses that acknowledge receipt and provide realistic timelines. Now, granted, all of us do not work in the same type of environment. Obviously, if you work in a restaurant, fast food, retail, certain service-based experiences where we aren't able to set these kinds of boundaries, we can still find a way to make it work for us, especially if we're in some form of leadership, okay? So I don't want you to hear this and assume that this is only for people in corporate environments. This is for people in nonprofit environments, government, service-based industries, period, okay? Even entrepreneurs, small business owners, you have the ability to show up the way that is going to be the healthiest and the most fulfilling for you, and demand and require that others respect that. But it's up to you because, again, we are training and signaling to others how we are to be seen and to be treated. All right. And the final strategy number 4, reframe your value proposition. Instead of being valuable because you're always available, become valuable because you're strategic, skilled, and results focused. This means sometimes saying, I can't take on this additional project right now, but I can deliver excellent results on X, Y, and Z. The goal is to be known for the quality of your work, not the quantity of your availability. Ooh, let me say that again. The goal is to be known for the quality of your work. Quality, not the quantity of your availability. I know that quite a few of us have started to realize that quality over quantity in our personal lives is very necessary. But have you realized that in your professional environment? Be known for quality, not necessarily quantity. When you consistently deliver high quality results within reasonable boundaries, you build a reputation as someone who's professional, reliable, and strategic. And those are skills, traits, and characteristics that will make you stand out against someone else that is always available like you used to be, but rarely brings value. Remember, you're not being hired to be available 24/7. Now, granted, depending on your job, you might be, but I'm speaking from a specific space of commonality. You're being hired to solve problems. That's what they hire you for. Either they hire you to solve problems. If you're making a little more money, you're in a leadership position, you are in fact hired to solve problems, okay? And create value. You're not just hands and feet and a mouth, okay? You bring a brain, you bring creativity, you bring individuality, you bring innovation. You contribute to the organizational success by showing up. And you can do that while maintaining your boundaries and your sanity. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, navigating the fear of being seen as difficult. And unfortunately, as women of color, especially Black women, this is going to be an issue. Now, you're probably thinking, Coach Nikki, this all sounds good, but what if I get labeled as challenging, difficult, or impossible to work with? What if it affects my performance reviews? What if I get passed over for promotions? These fears are very real, and they're especially real for women of color who've been taught that we have to be twice as good to get half as far. But here's what I want you to consider. What's the cost of not advocating for yourself? Eventually, it is going to bite you in the butt, and it might bite that whole sucker off. When you don't set boundaries, you become the person who's always overwhelmed, always stressed, always putting out fires. The person that is absolutely miserable, okay? Miserable, which means your personal life is probably also miserable. Is that the person who gets promoted? Is that the person who gets respected? Or is that the person who gets more work piled on because, quote, she can handle it, unquote? That hurts a little bit, that reality, but it's very, very true. Professional self-stewardship isn't about being difficult or challenging. It's about being strategic and intentional. It's about managing your energy and your attention so you can show up as your best self. If you let them burn you out, you are running on fumes and you are not going to provide your best to that organization. And your best self is more valuable than your most available self. So, here's how to navigate this. When you set boundaries, frame them in terms of business or organizational value. I want to make sure I can give this project the attention it deserves. So let me finish Project X first. Or, I'm committed to delivering quality work and accomplishing the mission of our organization. So I need to manage my capacity carefully. The right workplace, the workplace where you can thrive, will respect your boundaries. If your workplace punishes you for having reasonable boundaries, that's information about the workplace, not about you. Now, it's easy to say, go find another job, especially in this economy. But what I will say to you is that John Maxwell talks about how important it is to have a growth environment, whether that's a church, your personal surroundings, or your workplace. When you are in a growth environment, you grow 10 times, 100 times more than you would on your own. If you are in a workplace where you are stagnant and there is nowhere else for you to go, you have to make a decision if that is in alignment with your core values. Okay? Personally, I am leaving a job that I feel crazy for leaving because anybody would want to be able to work remotely, have the flexibility, and have the team that I work with for the rest of their career. But it does not align with my core values, who God says that I am, who He called me to be and to do. It does not align. So I am leaving that stability to step out into a space where it is going to be unstable. I don't know what's happening, what's going to happen. All I can do is trust God, be hopeful, and do what I can do. Instead of staying in this position, knowing what to expect, knowing that I'm not elevating anywhere, I just will be taking on more work year by year and maybe pennies on the dollar for my raise year by year, a little bonus, instead of stepping out there, trusting God, and the sky is the limit. That's the decision I've had to make. However, you, again, we go back to that discernment. You need to have a conversation with your Lord, and you need to have a conversation with yourself. Because if you are in a work environment that punishes you for protecting yourself and your well-being, there's a conversation that needs to be had with you and your work, the people at your work, okay? And that can be scary for some of us, but who else is going to advocate for you better than you? I'm going to drop the mic right there. Moving on. When guilt shows up at work, let's be real about what happens when you start implementing these strategies. The guilt is coming, just like last week in your personal life. You are going to feel guilty for a while about not staying late. You're going to feel guilty for not immediately responding to every request. You are going to feel guilty for prioritizing your own work over other people's urgent needs. This guilt is normal. And it's especially strong for those of us who've been conditioned to believe that our worth is tied to our willingness to sacrifice. But I need you to understand something. We said this before. Guilt doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you are changing. You are stretching yourself. Think about it. When you decide you want to be more flexible and you begin to practice stretching, it is uncomfortable at first, but it becomes easier. And then it becomes satisfying. It's the same thing when we're stretching ourselves from an emotional and a mental standpoint, a spiritual standpoint, a professional standpoint. When you feel guilty for setting boundaries at work, ask yourself, what story is this guilt trying to protect? Maybe it's the story that says you have to work harder than everyone else to prove your worth. Maybe it's the story that says your value comes from being indispensable. But are you really irreplaceable, sis? Are you? What would happen if you left this world tomorrow? What would they do? And I ask again, are you indispensable? Here's what I want you to remember. You were hired for your skills, your experience, and your ability to contribute. You were not hired to be a martyr. You are not to carry a savior complex for your organization. You were not hired to sacrifice your well-being for other people's conveniences. So when that guilt shows up, acknowledge it. Thank it for trying to protect you, and then ask yourself, what would someone who values themselves do in this situation? And then do it. And if you need help or you need someone to give you permission, hit me up in our community. I got you, girl. Let's talk about what this ripple effect of professional self-stewardship can look like. Here's what's beautiful about us learning to practice self-stewardship at work. You're not just changing your own experience, you're changing workplace culture. When you model healthy boundaries, you give other people permission to do the same. Think about it. If your boss is toxic, you are going to grow accustomed to that toxicity and most likely become toxic yourself to those who look to you. However, if one of you decide to have a healthy workplace, that begins to trickle down. Sometimes it can trickle up. When you model healthy boundaries, you give other people the permission to do the same. Think about it. Are you expected to set boundaries? Are you encouraged to do so? Or are you expected to be boundaryless? I struggled with that one, y'all. You know what I'm trying to say. When you stop responding to emails at 9 p.m., you're not just protecting your time, you're contributing to a culture where people don't feel pressured to be available 24/7. When you take your lunch break, you're modeling that rest is necessary for productivity. And might I say, this also goes for entrepreneurs and ministry leaders. You set the precedent for how everyone else is expected to show up. Okay? Early on in my journey, years ago, I pulled together a team for a nonprofit. This nonprofit concept has evolved over decades to what it is now. This was maybe the second time that I was attempting to pull this together. And so I pulled together a team of women, and I was the worst leader ever. Or manager, I should say, because leadership was not on the menu. It was management at that time, and I didn't quite understand the difference yet. And I was sending emails in the middle of the night, like, listen, yes, you're on your grind. I get you. And you can't shut your brain off, and you're just in it, okay? And you're eager and you're passionate, but you can't expect other people to be that way as well. You are setting a terrible precedent for the culture of your organization when you started off that way. So you have to be the person, the worker that you want to see others be as well. Okay? All right. When you ask for what you need instead of suffering in silence, you're showing other women that their needs matter too. When you advocate for yourself professionally, you're paving the way for others to do the same. You may not think someone is watching, but I guarantee you, if you do something different, someone will notice. Okay? Be encouraged, my sister. Now, here's the beautiful irony. When you start stewarding your energy and attention better, you actually become more effective at work, more efficient. You're more focused, more creative, more strategic. You're contributing from a place of strength instead of depletion. So this isn't just about your career success. It's about your life success. Because what's the point if professional achievement, if you're too burned out to enjoy it? Hello? What's the point of climbing the ladder if you lose yourself on every rung? When you finally get to this magical place that you're aiming for, will you even be able to enjoy it? Will your personal life be in shatters? Think about it. So, let's talk about implementation, because we are speaking from an organizational professional perspective. So we're going to say implementation. Let's get practical about it though. And I want you to attempt to start this week. Because knowledge without action is just entertainment. And we're not here to be entertained right now. We're here to be transformed. All right. Week 1 actions. This week, I want you to choose one boundary to implement. Maybe it's not checking email after 7 p.m. Maybe it's taking a full lunch break 3 times this week. Maybe it's saying, let me get back to you, instead of immediately agreeing to the next request. Then the next week, we take in baby steps, y'all. Identify your peak performance hours and then protect them. Block them on your calendar. Put them in your Google Calendar, your Outlook calendar, whatever it is that you use, your Notion. I want you to put them somewhere, set an alarm, whatever you have to do to remind yourself that those are your peak performance hours, and use them for your most important work. Do the things that you know you absolutely need to do, but struggle with the energy and the motivation to do them. Do those first. Something like being introverted and having to make sales calls is devastating. But if you try to do that when you don't even have the energy, that sounds like a disaster, and I've been there. So you have to start disciplining yourself in a way that sets you up for success. Moving forward, practice reframing your value. Start keeping track of your accomplishments. A lot of us don't like to talk about ourselves. We don't like to toot our own horn. I'm that friend that quotes movies, specifically Black culture movies. And I just heard Eartha Kitt in my head telling Eddie Murphy on Boomerang, you don't have to toot your own horn. Okay, that was totally off track. I'm sorry. Back to it. Start keeping track of your accomplishments, not just your availability. Note when you solve problems, create value, and contribute to team success. This isn't just about bragging. Matter of fact, I think looking at it as bragging is a negative connotation. It should be about just recognizing your worth and what you actually bring to the table. Sometimes, girl, you got to bring receipts, okay? A lot of times, actually. And every week, I want you to get in the habit of checking in with yourself. At the end of the week, maybe. How am I stewarding my energy at work this week or last week? What boundaries do I need to strengthen? What stories do I need to release? What lies have I been believing? What truths do I need to gravitate towards? What would honoring myself look like in this present situation? And sometimes that check-in includes, should I be looking to move somewhere that will value me in the way that I deserve to be valued? I know this has been a little bit heavy, but I think that this is so needed, because we definitely spend so much time interacting with others in environments where collaboration is necessary, management is necessary, leadership is necessary, hierarchy is necessary. So, for your call to action this week, I encourage you to be specific and strategic. Identify one area where you're overgiving at work and create a plan to change it. Maybe you're the person who always stays late to finish other people's stuff. Maybe you're the one who volunteers for every committee and project. Maybe you're the one who never says no to additional responsibilities. I want you to write it down, be honest with yourself, then ask yourself, what would it look like to steward my energy better in this area? Start creating a specific plan and set a specific boundary. Practice specific phrasing that you are going to use when the situation comes up again. And be ready to feel guilty and do it anyway. And most importantly, be ready to have a serious conversation with yourself about how others respond. But this is the most important part, sis. Commit to implementing this change for 1 week. Just 1 week. See what happens. Notice how you feel. Notice how others respond. Notice what changes when you value yourself enough to set boundaries. Remember, you deserve to have a career that energizes you, not one that constantly and consistently depletes you. You deserve to be valued for your contributions, not just your availability. And you deserve to work in an environment that respects your humanity, not just your productivity. Professional self-stewardship isn't selfish, it's strategic. It's recognizing that your career is a marathon, not a sprint. It's understanding that sustainable success requires sustainable practices. When you steward your energy well at work, you show up as your best self, which makes the organization better. So this week, I challenge you to choose yourself at work. Set one boundary, protect 1 hour, value your energy, honor your worth, because the world needs what you have to offer. But it needs you at your best, not at your most depleted, drained, and overwhelmed. All right. Thank you so much for sticking with me on this. I truly appreciate you. Now, I would like to also let you know that I am working on a curriculum specifically for unmasking at work for workplace leaders. I want to speak directly to those of you who lead teams, manage others, or shape workplace culture. If you found yourself recognizing these red flags, not just in yourself, but across your department or organization, this isn't just about you. It's about the systems you're working with. It's about your culture at your workplace. And let me tell you something real. When individuals constantly overextend, mask their needs, or struggle to set boundaries, it's not just a people problem. It's an organizational problem. It's a cultural problem, and that affects everything externally, including your customer, client, or mission experience. And that's exactly why I created Unmask at Work, a framework which is a strategic model to help organizations move from performative professionalism to authentic, high-trust leadership environments. We help organizations measure their psychological safety and workplace health, equip managers with emotional intelligence and boundary-respecting leadership tools, shift performance norms from availability to strategic contribution. So, if you're in a position to influence your workplace, don't just encourage your staff to set boundaries. Do the deeper work of creating a culture where boundaries are honored, voice is safe, and authenticity and wholeness is no longer a liability. If you want to know where your culture stands, stay tuned, get connected. I will be releasing the Unmask Readiness Scorecard, or you can schedule a liberatory leadership consultation with me today, because systems need healing just as much as people do. And again, we spend so much time in our professional environments. Why not be able to create something that we can be proud of and that can be just as healthy as the environments that we work so hard to create at home? All right. Well, we are done, y'all. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, you weren't born to be busy. You were born to be impactful. Man, someone had told me that 15 years ago, I wouldn't have believed it. You weren't created to be available. You were created to be valuable. And you can be all of that while honoring your humanity. You can be this and that, sis. All right. Until next week, keep unmasking, keep choosing yourself, and keep remembering that your worth is not measured by your willingness to sacrifice. You have been listening to Sisters Unbothered, a sacred sanctuary for Black women and women of color who are reclaiming their peace, power, and presence in a world that demands merely our performance. This season, we're journeying through the Unmasked series, a multi-layered experience of personal development training, emotional healing, and group coaching for women ready to take off the masks, step into congruency, and live as their whole, healed, authentic selves. If you are, in fact, ready to go deeper, if you are ready to unlearn and relearn, deconstruct and rebuild within yourself and your life, join us for the live transformation circle sessions on Thursday evenings, transformation coaching calls, which is basically group coaching on Saturday mornings. And if you're ready for personal, tailored strategy and growth, I am currently accepting new one-on-one coaching clients. Click the link in the description and send me a message and schedule a discovery call. You weren't born to live silenced. You weren't created to shrink. You are worthy of rest, reciprocity, and radical love. Sis, this is your season to unmask, unlearn, and unbecome what never belonged to you. Until next time, be encouraged, be empowered, be fulfilled, be unbothered.